Welcome to Blue Dirt, the podcast that digs deep into the foundation of commercial real estate investing. Unlike most real estate shows that focus on deal making and market trends, Blue Dirt gets into the nuts and bolts of what truly builds long-term value, the building itself. We break down how to spot deferred maintenance before it costs you, why a solid preventative maintenance program is a game changer, and how triple net leases can maximize your investment returns. We'll also explore the importance of strong landlord-tenant relationships and how they drive stability and growth in your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, Blue Dirt gives you the practical knowledge to make smarter, more profitable decisions in commercial real estate. It's time to get your hands dirty and build value from the ground up. Let's dig in. Welcome to this episode of the Blue Dirt podcast, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. In today's episode, we are hoping to answer the following questions. Why would anyone spend a significant amount of money upfront on a new building when that space may not get used for years, or if you don't even know what the use will be in several years? And then planning for future development with current tenants. So those are kind of the topics that we want to discuss today. I'm Michael Caro. This is
Don Rudhead,
and we are your hosts of Blue Dirt. So everything we try to talk about on the Blue Dirt podcast centers around actual deals that we have done or that we're working on, or construction projects that we are diving into. And as we learn...
Or mistakes.
What's that?
Or mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's how we learn. We learn from... we are idiots, and we're your chief idiots of this podcast, and we make a lot of idiotic mistakes, and we're going to share these with you so maybe you can avoid just a couple of them and make more money in doing it. So we are going to talk about a building that we recently put under contract, and it's just under 14,000 square feet, 2 stories. The first floor has 4 retail spaces. 2 of the spaces have tenants. The other 2 spaces is being used by the property owner. And then the second floor, which is just under 7,000 square feet, is completely vacant. And when I say vacant, it has nothing inside. How would you describe the space?
We typically refer to it as a cold, dark shell, but it's a blank canvas. There's no electrical. There's no mechanical. It's raw. I mean, that's what
I would say. It's worse than a blank canvas. And why would I say that?
Well, okay, fair enough. That in our world,
it's going to cost us money to get it to a blank canvas.
That's more vanilla box. Yes. Okay, fair enough. It's a lot worse. Yes. It needs absolutely everything. It needs access. It needs power. It needs mechanical. It needs plumbing. It needs it has a structure. There's a outside and a roof, but that's it.
So when we talk about cold, dark shell, a lot of times a cold, dark shell in the retail world would be, you have a box that you can put your business in. It may be a concrete floor. It might have, the walls have the structure in place, maybe not even drywall. The ceiling might be exposed to the roof deck. Okay. So, and everybody has their own term of what a cold, dark shell is versus a white box or a vanilla box. And so, but at each phase, it gets closer to the end product. In this case, the reason why I wanted Don to clarify the cold, dark shell is we actually have to complete work on the space to actually get it to cold, dark shell. Right. So in this case, the flooring, instead of there just being a flooring that you can then put whatever flooring cover you want on it, we actually have to remove all of the existing floor.
Yeah, it probably was beautiful at one point in time. It looks like it's original hardwood, but it's been so moist in that space that it looks like an ocean. It's all wavy. And, right. Yeah, it needs to be removed to put decking down.
Right. And again, this doesn't scare us, but so to get back to the original question, what we're posing is, we're about to do all new leases with the first floor tenants. Each of the tenants are on a month-to-month lease, which is, for us, it's a great opportunity. Don brought up a point the other day, because we are going to need a fire separation between the first and second floor before we could ever build on the second floor. So as we're forecasting ahead, we really don't have a purpose of we have some thoughts on what we think could go on the second floor. We think it could be, several apartments or condos. Could be an office space, but we don't really think about the office space because there are some parking limitations where we think residential might be better suited for the parking situation. And so, but this fire separation between the two floors is our critical path. And right now, there's an opportunity when you are creating new leases with your tenants. And Don, what did you say about this the other day? I love this.
The honeymoon period.
Right. Describe the honeymoon period.
It's really this time that you're kind of, you really don't know the other person. You're kind of figuring them out. And what we found is when we enter a new property with these individuals, many times we're both trying to figure each other out, and they're just much more amenable, new in this relationship to us being a bit more challenging. And that's what we are. We're challenging because we're trying to improve the property on multiple different areas. So this one would be renovating the second floor. So if we enter this relationship with them in the beginning and just get this out of the way, get all the awkwardness, get all the noise. And
let's talk about the power dynamic. Okay. So in this case, we've got tenants that want to remain in place, but they don't have a lease. So a new buyer comes in, the new buyer has the ability to get rid of the tenants, negotiate with the tenants, keep the tenants, whatever the new buyer wants, they really have full control of the destiny of that direction. And so being that we have tenants that want to remain in place, they tend to be more amenable to what our direction is. Now, but on the flip side, when Don talks about the chaos that we are going to create, the chaos is improving a building and spaces that we believe have been neglected for a long period of time. So our chaos is construction. To improve a building and to improve spaces, there is a little bit of heartache that goes into that. So the heartache would be what?
It could be a huge variety. One of the biggest ones that we see is probably just water, turning off water to redo whatever we have going on there, maybe relocating some of the backflows. That's one thing I was looking at over there. They're just not in a good position. May we add an elevator? Cutting that concrete, it's a loud operation going on. There's dust and water everywhere. So there's maybe turning off the power, adding more. So those types of interruptions is typically
we might be blocking off the sidewalk. We might be limiting access because when we have painters out front with scaffolding, there's a lot of intrusion. The noise levels when you're working on a second floor are definitely going to be, a pain in the butt. It just happens. And so because of our experience, we want to make sure that we craft a lease. And in this case, it's really a lease exhibit that I have drafted that really says, hey, listen, here's all the stuff we're going to do. We want you to know in advance, this is coming. And we want you to know up front so you don't get mad at us. We really want great relationships with our tenants. And so whenever we can let them know in advance, and so they're properly prepared, we want them to be properly prepared. And that way, when it does happen, they knew in advance, this is what I signed up for. I knew there was going to be some struggles with noise. I knew there was going to be struggles with access. And it's not long periods of time. We're talking typically hours or a day.
Correct.
Here and there. So it's not, the noise can last for a full month, but we just want them to know in advance. And while they're in this honeymoon phase, they're more apt to be, no problem. Because long-term, they know it's to their benefit as well, because they're going to get a more beautiful building.
Correct. Yep. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. It's definitely a bit more of a dance. And like you said, it's nothing that is really that. We try to do our best and be mildly intrusive, but we try to communicate in writing. This is a great example. In advance, we'll try to make phone calls, but inadvertently something is going to happen where the vendor calls, hey, I'm going to be there in 15 minutes and I need to turn the water off. I need to, start doing whatever that is going to cause some interruption. And, if we address this up front, if we just make everybody known, it tends to be a little bit smoother, So
let's get the same example where you have an existing building and tenants in place that they already have their long-term leases. Well, Don deals with this a lot more than I do, but tell us some of the examples that you've had over the years with tenants and their demands, whether reasonable or unreasonable, and what you have to deal with. And when you don't have this honeymoon period up front where you get to decide in a new lease document, tell us some of the experiences and feedback you've received.
It really depends on the creativity of the tenant and also kind of what they're going through of their life cycle. And that's what you're trying to also balance here is they're maybe going through a great phase of their business where they're just going gangbusters and they can't handle this additional stress, or it could be the opposite. We've done simple things like, hey, we're turning off, the water. I keep going back to that one because for office tenants, that really is a big interruption.
Because of the restrooms. I mean, we have to come up with alternative restroom solutions.
Yeah, we've had to bring out portalettes, things of that nature, just to be down for a day. But that's what we're trying to do. They've wanted full new restrooms out of that, where they've said, hey, you're turning off the plumbing for the building for that person to upgrade their restroom. And they're doing it there at cost, but they want a restroom. I mean, why wouldn't I want a brand new restroom? Rent abatement is probably the most common one we see.
And how often do we give that rent abatement, Donnie?
Maybe I can think of 2 times.
We might get asked 100 times. Sorry. I mean, we are going to perform normal acts. Now, if we are truly interrupting your business and there's a extenuating circumstance, we always want to be helpful. But the reality of it is we're always going to be improving the space around you, sometimes in your space. And so, progress is
messy,
can be messy and painful, and we don't want it to be. And
that's just the nature. And we really, I think, try to be as conscious of what they have going on as possible. And like I said, portalettes is a great solution. If you have to do some major construction, you have plumbing down for a couple of days, bring in a portalette for $150. When you're really, bringing out the costs for new restroom, 10 grand, what's an extra $150 to keep everybody happy.
All right. So let's kind of talk about the space. So now we have the second floor space. We know from previous construction projects that we need a fire separation. So in this case, Don and I were battling back and forth. Do we put in the fire separation on the first floor ceiling now, or when it's needed? We may not even address this construction project for 5 years. I have no idea. Don said, let's just do it now. So what does that mean? Because each of these 4 spaces has this beautiful wood, kind of a tongue and groove type ceiling that has a really cool look to it. We actually have to tear all that down. My wife would like us to keep it, maybe plane it and put it back up if it's feasible. Don't know that it is. Yeah. Because she's taken over 2 of the spaces. So we have to go in with probably 1 or 2 layers of drywall to give the fire rating that's needed from the ceiling standpoint. And so we're going to have to go into each of the tenant spaces. And I don't know how long each space takes. Each space is a little over 1,400 square feet. The 2 occupied spaces, the other spaces are a little bit larger. So if you were to go into one space, tear off the whole wood ceiling, repair it, and then put on, let's just say 2 layers of drywall, what would, timing wise, is that a 4-day job?
For those 2 spaces, because they're really almost one, right? They're kind of tied together, so we could probably hit them both at the same time.
You're talking about the 2. I'm talking about the tenant spaces.
Inside the tenant spaces.
And the nice thing about these is the 2 tenant spaces are fairly wide open. Although One of them has a lot of stuff everywhere, so that's going to be a challenge. But they're fairly wide open.
What is the call it bike shop? What are they? What is their ceiling right now? Is it a drop?
Well, right now it's a drop ceiling, so we would remove the drop ceiling forever and not replace it.
That's tough.
We would go back up to the original height, which is what they want anyways.
Okay, so we don't need to go back with drop.
We don't need to go back with drop. We're going to demo the drop, go back up to the ceiling, take out the wood. I presume it's wood up there. Take out the wood, add the drywall ceiling, and and then finish it and paint
back with the wood.
Probably not go back with the wood.
Only because of the amount of equipment that you have to plan around the height. We'll probably have to bring in our own scaffolding. And the problem is probably a lift makes the most sense.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking through this job now. So you're getting to see my crib. You're probably, if we did lift, did it kind of intermittently. We're not sealing. It's not like we're taping off the drywall.
See, folks, this is what I have to deal with. I mean, the guy just is such a problem making a decision. His brain works slower than everybody else's. So this is where I get impatient.
Really great.
I just asked if it takes 4 days. It's yes or no.
No. I think we're probably closer to 6.
Okay. 6 days. So 6 days per space. And so, that's going to be a disruption for the tenant. Now, if you went in, and so what I'm putting in the lease as an exhibit is we're talking about the ceiling in part of this. We're talking about the renovation in part of this, just so they know in advance. So when they sign this lease now, they're fully prepared for this. I'm also adding a new sign protocol. I've reached out to one of our local vendors called Bricks Design to come up with a design plan for a blade sign in front of the buildings that the landlord, we would pay for the blade sign structure, and then each tenant would pay for the 2 faces that would go on either side of the blade sign. And again, the reason why I have to do all this now, even though we don't close on the property for another month and a half, is we have to go when you're in a downtown area, many times they have some type of historic district. In this case, we fall within the Architectural Review Board district. So anything we want to do, change the exterior color, add sign blades, change anything to the outside of the building, we have to submit an application, go before the ARB, and get them to approve it. So, and I think they're very reasonable. They might have some suggestions, but their whole goal is to try to keep the historical integrity of the district. And so that's something that we enjoy because we don't tear stuff down and we don't do new construction. We renovate existing structures. And this building that we are under contract for was built in 1912. So we're kind of excited to help restore it back to its original glory. It sits on a really great location in downtown Pensacola. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah. And in my experience, like you're saying with the ARB or any of these historical boards that we've had to go before, they're usually very reasonable. They're usually, it's really a process is really what you're having to just follow. So
right.
They're not, I've never had the experience where they're trying to make my life difficult. It's usually, hey, this is the protocol. You have to follow it. And here's the guidelines. As long as you do those things. But so many people want to go in there and just argue.
Well, I brought one of my buildings to them years ago, and I actually enjoyed the conversation. They're saying, "Hey, listen, it happened to be 7 and 9 East Gregory."
Okay,
and so what they'll do is they'll bring up historical photographs of the building, and we were going to replace all of the window panels, tear out the entire front of the building, and put in brand new, higher quality windows. And they had a couple of suggestions. It really didn't cost much extra, but they had asked, hey, wouldn't it make more sense visually to do, I'll say 5 panels versus 4 panels? And they just thought it was more in line with the original construction of the building. When they showed me the old photos, I said, it was not a big ask to me. Did it cost a little bit more? Yes. But it stayed within the integrity of how it was originally built. And so I was thrilled to say yes. I mean, so a lot of times I come up with really good ideas that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. With this building, we were getting ready to add a new storefront, make it 1 space into 2. And she did the same thing. She goes, let me see what kind of photos I can find of that building. Because there really was incomplete records from when it was built. and she's pulling out these awesome historical photos and, telling me where I can go get copies of those. Right. So it's just, they've always been very helpful.
Right. So let's see what else. So we also want to put in an elevator. And again, only because we want all the intrusion to be as much as possible now versus, a year or 2 years or 3. So do we have to spend more money up front? Yes. But it's kind of like, let's tear this Band-Aid off. Let's have the big mess all at the same time and go through all of these permits and approvals at the same time and get as much work done as possible. Even if it sits vacant up there for the next several years, I don't care, because we have tenancy downstairs that isn't being disrupted in a consistent manner over every job that we do. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go upstairs into the second floor, and this amazing wood floor that used to be wonderful at one time, it's all buckled in a whole bunch of different ways. What we've decided to do is we'll take out all that wood. We'll go down with just floor decking. And we'll probably leave the space. We just want to make sure it's dried in. So what we do is we work on the envelope of the building first. Don will make sure that roof is completely sealed. Everything. We have a little bit of work to do on the roof.
Yeah, we done a site visit the other day with one of our vendors, and we were kind of walking through some of the ideas. I think the one we ultimately landed on was a coating that he was going to recommend. It's something very simple. That our team can even apply. It's just a rolled on like an elastomeric, but it was a very specific type coating that, because of some of the ponding, it holds up better in those areas. And if we could prolong that roof maybe a year or two, depending on ultimately when we do, he said it could last up to 5 years. But
now,
if we came back,
now there's a reason why we typically don't do things short term.
Correct.
But the reason why we want to do it short term is
because we don't know what's going to happen really on the second floor. And when we do the roof for the second floor, there may be, curbs over here. We don't know the final layout. So what we don't want to do is put this brand new roof on, and then in a year or two, go there and start cutting it up like Swiss cheese and adding all sorts of punctures. And then we have
let me elaborate on that. Let's say we ultimately choose to put in 5 apartments. Well, what Don's talking about is where we put in plumbing stacks or where we put in air conditioning, we typically have to puncture the roof, create a ventilation, or create a curb where the air conditioning would sit on. So we cut a big square in the roof. And so no matter what we do, we're going to have a whole bunch of these cuts. We don't know where they're going to be. So instead of installing an expensive, let's just say $80,000 roof today, we might do an inexpensive fix. Let's just say it's $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is. We might do a temporary fix until we get the proper layout. Once we get the proper layout, and then we build all of these kitchens and restrooms and install all this air conditioning. Now we've cut this roof into 40 different places.
All by design.
All by design.
The plan, all the right curbs, the roofer's flashing, everything proper. Everything's done correctly.
Once we make all these cuts, then we go ahead and put that expensive roof on, and then they're going to properly seal it around every new cut. And then you have a roof that will last you 20 to 30 years.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's at least how we're looking at it at this time.
Right. And so the goal is we want to spend a whole bunch of money right now. It also kind of helps us with our financing. So when we go and get the financing, let's say this phase 1 is going to cost $500,000. Well, if we're buying it for, let's say 1.7 million, and we know we need to put another $500,000 into it. Now we're going to go for a loan for $2.2 million. Let's assume we need 20% down, because that's the math I can do in my head. Although it's probably 25%, but 20% of 2.2 million is now we need $440,000 to put down on the project. If we only got the 20% of the $1.7 million, that's $340,000. Plus we'd have to come out of pocket for the additional $500. Now we need $340 plus $500. We need $840 versus if we roll it into the loan, now we only need $440. So that's how we look at things for going to get our loans. By the way, this particular loan is in May of 2025 is 6.43%, which, I'm not disappointed with. 2 years ago, the loan that we've got on one of our projects was 8%.
Yeah, it was just under, I thought.
At 7.99, 7.95%. And then we bought the Pace property, which was 7.
Was that 7.25%?
Maybe 7.25%. So, no, hey, listen, we love the free money of the old days where we were getting things for 4.5%. And we've got plenty of those loans. But again, we don't worry about the interest rates. If it pencils, it pencils. And we don't force, we're extremely conservative on our underwriting approach and feel pretty good about this. What am I missing about this project, Don?
Someone had mentioned, and, just for the benefit of everybody, they were talking about why wouldn't we do second floor retail? What is your thoughts? Kind of just the, generic.
Intuitively, my thoughts. I mean, I'm certainly no second floor retail expert. I don't really know. I just don't know that it's not necessarily sought after, and the price per square foot would certainly be less. I don't even know the marketing of a second floor space. I mean, you typically want all your retail on the first floor, certainly in a downtown market, and you want to lift your offices to the second floor. I just don't see retail as a second floor item. If you have a certain,
not in this market, it seems like maybe in the bigger markets,
well, they don't have a choice, right? They have to go vertical when the cost of dirt is so crazy. But in a market like this, I don't know. That's my take. Along the entire Gulf Coast, I don't see second floor retail with any success. Anyways, there's the Bellagio in Perdido that had some second floor retail. Occasionally, if you're on the road and they were doing a restaurant, I can see that. Mm-hmm. But it's just not my area of expertise on second floor retail.
Yeah, I naturally went right to, especially in our downtown core. For that high end residential, seems like it's the highest and best use. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. That was at least what was turning around in somebody's head.
Right. So we're talking about potentially. There's I reached out to a contractor, friend of ours that had built some smaller apartments, and he has recommended a designer out of New Orleans. So some of these places like New Orleans that, have a higher cost of construction and property values in their downtown core, these smaller areas, these areas that are more used to smaller development sizes of spaces, they're so much more creative than we would be. When you have the room to build as big as you want, for not much more money, I'm going to say that allows us to be a little bit lazy. But when you have to be super, super efficient, you probably want to bring in an expert that is used to dealing with very tiny spaces. I got to imagine anybody in Europe would be the best designer of tiny spaces because they just do so much with such a small space. It's pretty impressive. So we're probably going to seek the guidance of somebody out of New Orleans who has had a lot of success building within these smaller spaces. So that I'm looking forward to that process as well.
Yeah.
What else am I missing, Donnie?
I don't think anything at this time. We just got to keep working on the budget and inspections. Had HVAC done today, so we'll get some numbers. They're using some of the old coolant, R22 in the first floor. So those will have to be replaced in the near short term, and we'll just keep getting the inspections and follow up.
All right. So the question was, why would we spend so much money up front on something you may not plan to use for years? And that is tenant comfort, I'm going to say, and financing. So in this case, we want to do a lot to get it to a current point and, or to a future point that makes sense to then begin the next phase 2 of the development. And that is how we plan to develop for our future tenants as well. And in this case, who knows? We may just sell the entire second floor, and at least they have a good platform from which to start from.
Yeah. We'll see.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of Blue Dirt, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. That's a wrap for this episode of Blue Dirt. We're here to help you build smarter, invest wiser, and create long-term value in commercial real estate, one solid foundation at a time. If you found today's insights useful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you know somebody who could benefit from these discussions, share Blue Dirt with them. Got questions or topics you'd like us to cover? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep digging deep, stay sharp, and remember, real value is built from the ground up. See you on the next episode.